To get the variables nailed down, the term gene is a bit abstract. In physical properties, in its physical presence, the unit is better referred to as an allele. That's the physical conformation of that part of DNA, which we call the gene, and it may have its own special properties for this specific allele. A given gene can be represented by more than one allele. The tricky part is that each individual, for creatures like us and most of the creatures that you know, has two alleles per gene. We could even say two genes per gene, but that's confusing, so two alleles. To make that even more fun, a given gene may be represented by many alleles across a population of individuals, each individual representing with two apiece, whether duplicates or not. Population genetics is concerned with the percentages of the alleles across the whole population, with not much reference, at least not at first, to the particular pairings represented by individuals. We have some terminology. The percent for one allele is typically represented by the letter P, the percent for another allele being represented by Q. If there are more than two available in that population for that given gene, then we simply add letters and the equations get a little bit more lumpy. The big question is, do P and Q change at the microevolutionary level? Which is an easy question. Fortunately, being big, the answer is yes. Much of population genetics is engaged in mathematically modeling these shifts in those of frequencies. I've run great exercises to demonstrate to students that when we toss into the reproductive act collectively for a cohort of creatures, all of the alleles that we have available, that we look across all the offspring, and P and the Q stay the same. Especially considering that although two alleles are paired for one of my genes, that is to say, present in each one of my cells, giving me my particular genotype for that gene. When the alleles are thrown into the reproductive process collectively across my cohort, they're separate from one another. That's what gametes are, in our case sperm and ova, are cells for which each gene is represented by only one of the two alleles that that particular individual had. One's ova or one's sperm are not all genetically identical, far from it. Therefore, it's as though I took my two cards that represent my genotype for a given gene, but when it comes time to consider our whole generation as a reproducing body, then these cards have been thrown in individually. They'll show up in new pairings with someone else's allele in the offspring.